Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is Aaron Trevino here. We have another wonderful guest. We have Noah from Boise, Idaho. How you doing, Noah?
Good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. I know this has been in the works for a bit. We spoke earlier a few weeks back, and it's great to get you on the show. I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, me too. I think we're going to have some good conversations about real estate and hopefully I give some value back to your listeners. So,
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So for those of us who aren't too familiar with you, would you introduce yourself, please?
yeah, sure, man. So I'm primarily a fix and flip investor out in Boise, Idaho. Boise is one of the number one residential markets and multifamily markets in the United States right now. We're averaging about 25 flips a year right now over the last 2 years. So we're quickly growing and scaling. We've realized that there's a cap on the flips we can do. So we've kind of started up this marketing machine, and we're going to start doing some wholesaling on the side. And then within like the next 6 months or so, we're going to pick that marketing machine up and drop it in another market. So that's kind of the 10,000 foot view of my business.
Amongst many other things, right? It kind of seems like there's so many different hot markets. And, I'll be honest, is that, really Idaho, at least growing up, even up until, a few years ago, was never on my radar, but you're hearing a lot more about it now.
Yeah, 100%. I actually had a buddy in high school who had family who lived here, and he was dead set on, even high school. He's like, I want to move to Idaho. I'm going to Idaho. I was like, there's no way I will ever end up in Idaho. I mean, to me, I didn't know the difference between Idaho or Iowa or where it was or anything. It just didn't sound like fun. Like I just thought flat potatoes and farm fields. So, which it's not. Idaho is actually, I've lived in like 4 states now, and Idaho has been my favorite state by far. People are nice. The climate is great. Obviously, I came here at the right time, and my business has been abundant, riding a wave. But other than that, it's just a beautiful place. So.
Okay, understood. And I'm curious, what were the other, the other states that you're kind of comparing Idaho to?
So I grew up in California. I went to school in Utah, so I lived there for like 4 years, and I lived in Washington for 2. So I kind of all over the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
So, a lot of the states have some bleed over and some crossover. Like Southern Idaho is very similar to Northern Utah because they touch and they cross over. And then I don't see that Idaho is as much like Washington unless you go really far north. But Idaho is also very sparse. So it's like there's Boise, and then there's like 2 hours between here and the next town. And then from there, it's like another 3 or 4 hours. So there's parts of Idaho that are similar to Washington, but Washington was a lot more green.
Okay, understood. And I'm curious as well. I'm familiar, obviously, with kind of the Texas economy, the market here. What's kind of driving the economy in Boise or even Idaho in general?
Yeah, I'd probably summarize that down to a couple things. One, we have some really cool like tech startups going here. So the biggest industry that we have, or the biggest tech company we have here, is called Micron. So they're pretty big. And then from them, they've had a couple other some other tech startup spinoff. One of them is called T-Sheets. It's like a time management software for remote employees. So we're having a little bit of like a tech boom here. That's fractionally responsible for the growth, but I would say more so it's been political changes throughout other states and people fleeing their states, and those states having higher home prices than Boise, Idaho does. So if you would have moved here 2 years ago, you could have bought a 4,000 square foot brand new construction home for under $300,000. In most of the states these people are coming from, and you probably feel this a lot in Texas, you guys are probably getting a ton of California transplants. In California, in 90% of the cities, if you sell a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home that was built in the 1950s, you're clearing $500,000. So you just think about like you sell your smaller, older home and you move to a state where you can buy a home 3 times the size and brand new and still have $200,000 in your pocket. It was kind of an interesting trade-off, right? We've appreciated probably like 20% a year for like the last 2 years, and don't quote me on that. Someone could Google it and I might be way off, but so the home prices aren't quite as affordable. I think we're going to start seeing some growth slow down. I don't think our local economy supports the prices long term that we're seeing, but I still think people are going to keep dumping in here. And I think another interesting thing for people to think about is with the coronavirus, we had so many companies that changed to a work from home order. right? Which then allowed people to move wherever the heck they want to move. So if you can work from home off a California wage and move somewhere where it's cheaper to own a home, why would you not? So that, I think that even if you know, our home prices plateau, because you know now the average home price is like $400,000 here or something like that, we're still going to see a ton of people come. There's still more opportunity. It's clean, it's open, it's different. There's so much outdoor recreation. So those are that's a long drawn out answer to say there's quite a few things that are probably pulling people here.
Yeah, and it's super interesting. I mean, you touched on as well, kind of the work from home scenario after last year, and it's kind of revolutionized the way that not only the way we work, but the way we live. But there's a few cities, it seems like in kind of that mountain range, maybe Jackson Hole, maybe Boise. It's kind of like a few different cities that are kind of becoming more of a remote working location now.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think it's happening in quite a few places. I mean, we're seeing all this interesting transient patterns of like where people are, migration patterns of where people are going. And I think it's all based off of choice at this point too. So it's like, okay, I can go anywhere. Where do I want to go? Not where do I have to be?
Yeah.
So it's like, Tennessee is one of the states that we are kind of looking at for multifamily investing. And holy smokes, man, if we would have gotten Tennessee like 2 years ago, it would have been a different ballgame. There's tons of people moving there. And again, cheap housing. So I think that's probably a correlation, right? Is if the median housing price is significantly less than whatever state these people are leaving, you're going to see a migration pattern where it's, you know, people leaving the more expensive states, higher cost of living, to the lower cost of living states.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it proves, we have a really interesting future ahead of us. But I'm interested in, also as well, kind of a bit about your background. I know you've lived in California, you lived in Utah, a bit in Washington State. I'm curious, when you were growing up, was real estate ever on your radar, or how did you kind of transition into the industry?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. And I want to throw it back at you, and I want to hear from you as well, because I
Yeah,
think that'd be cool for me to understand where you came from and how you got to where you are.
yeah.
But I think I always wanted to own rentals.
Mm,
So that's actually, I remember my high school senior trip, and we're all on the school bus going to Magic Mountain, which is like an amusement park down in Southern California. And I remember all the kids talking about what they wanted to do. Oh, I want to go study this, and I want to go to college for this. I want to, go get a job in this industry. And I was like, I want to build shipping container apartment complexes. And 7, 8 years ago, that's not or I guess longer than that now. I don't know. Maybe what is that, 9 years ago? Um, that wasn't a thing. People didn't build things out of shipping container apartments. Now I haven't been able to realize that goal or bring it forward into real life yet, but it could potentially be something on the horizon. But so for as long as I can remember, I've wanted to do stuff with creating interesting ways to build buildings or come up with cool concepts for, like, I was like, yeah, man, can I put shipping container on wheels, and can I make a little dwelling unit for myself? Now, lo and behold, look at the tiny home movement that we just kind of went through over the last 2 years. But yeah, so I think I've had this love for real estate for a long time. I like taking old things and making them useful, or recycling some type of purpose into something more useful. But more so, I think I wanted to head down an entrepreneurial path and just be a business owner and create value that way. So, I mean, really, and I think too, that there's a correlation between that. The most successful business owners in real estate treat it as a business. They don't just treat it as real estate. Right. So,
and there's an interesting distinction between the two, because it almost kind of, we were talking a bit about kind of the changes in maybe the way people work and live, but there's also changes in kind of the way business is conducted. It's almost gotten to the point where it's not so cut and dry transactional. There's so many other factors involved.
yeah, 100%. So how did you get into real estate? Like, what was it that brought you to where you are now?
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny you asked me this question, because I actually, so at, I gave a presentation last week, basically just kind of explaining, construction lending, basically us being able to finance new construction deals, developments, and flips, right? So that's kind of a bit about what we do. And in the presentation, I talked a bit about my grandpa. So this kind of goes back. I'll preface it with this: my grandpa was not a wealthy man. He was not a multimillionaire. He left this earth with, with no debt in his pocket, right? you know, kind of that World War II era, you know, paid everything in cash.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was growing up, I noticed that, you know, he would buy small, you know, he would buy these smaller single family homes, or he would buy, you know, these little, you know, these quads or these duplexes, and he would, I guess, make money, you know, just with rent, right? So he would go in, add value, and then, you know, just have it as a rental. And to me as a little kid, it kind of seemed like, wow, you can do something like that, right? Like you don't, you're not just restricted to your own house. Yeah, well, it's real estate, right? That's kind of how you can make money doing it. So to me, it sounds very tried and silly, but as a little kid, you know, that kind of plants a seed in you for later.
100%, man. Yeah. Especially when it's someone so close to you, because then you feel like, you know, maybe, oh, it's in my blood. I have potential. I could do it. You know what I mean? I think
Yeah.
it's really easy to look at people outside your family or your organization or whatever it may be, and think, oh, that's just for them. That doesn't really work for someone like me, you know. And then to just kind of then you shut down your brain's potential to even think about how it's possible. You're just already telling yourself it doesn't work.
Yeah, completely. And you know that kind of goes into, I mean, it may sound cliche, but kind of the unexplored territory of the mind too. And you know, when you see that, you kind of think, well, how many of, you know, maybe your supposed shortcomings are, you know, self-imposed, right? Like how much do you really have in the tank?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, let me pause. Let me. Sorry, I know we're in the middle of a live recording, but I don't want my computer to die. Let me grab my charger.
Yeah, for sure.
Hopefully, you can cut a part of this out or something.
Yeah, yeah, of course. No sweat.
All right, cool. So your grandpa owned a series of sounds like, you know, smaller multifamily properties, duplex, triplex, fourplex, and so you watched him collect these rents and probably realized early on, hey, that seems a lot. That seems like a better return than working till I die.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, and what was interesting, you know, you kind of touched on it briefly as well, but like he wasn't an Ivy leaguer, you know, he wasn't, you know, he didn't have a fancy education or anything like that. He was just, you know, he worked hard. He was a teacher. I mean, and he's kind of that middle class story, right? That kind of, you know, hey, just making a plan and executing the plan and doing it, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's so cool about real estate is for anybody who's willing to work at it, right? Like it's not hard, but it's not that hard. It's not that easy. It takes some work, but literally anyone can do it. If you're a mom, you're a stay-at-home mom, and your full-time gig is taking care of your family, you could carve out 2 to 3 hours a week. And if you were consistent and you nailed down what niche you wanted to be in, you could go be successful in real estate. And I think that that's what's so beautiful about this is there's a lot of entry, there's a lot of industries where the barriers to entry are too high. You know, you'd need years and years of expertise to figure it out. But real estate, you set some goals and you commit to them. You know, your life could be completely changed in 12 months.
Yeah, and it, you know, even just hearing that, you know, it's enough to fire you up and, you know, make you want to go out and do some deals and do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
yeah. No, and I'm curious as well. I know you talked about, you know, growing up in California, and then living in a few different states. But you know, if you wouldn't mind elaborating, you know, what was your first deal and what was it like?
Yeah. I had graduated college and I was working a full-time job in corporate America. And I didn't hate the job at the time. So, you know, it was fun. Like I was climbing up through management, I was getting these promotions and getting bigger and bigger checks, and that was cool. But suddenly I realized that I was working a lot more than would ever be sustainable long term. It was like 55, like, so I got promoted. At first, the requirement was that you worked 50 hours a week. Then I got promoted and they said they want me to work 55 hours a week. And the next promotion was over 60. And I was like, what is the point? Like, I'm working continuously more for each time the increase in pay was slightly smaller. And I just thought, this is just so backwards. This is not sustainable. So, you know, I kind of brought myself back to my thought about real estate. I said, well, you know, I could do something. I could buy rentals. I can figure things out with owning property or whatever. So I got on bigger pockets and started digging around. And I was like, okay, how do I invest in real estate? How do I get started? And I came across something called wholesaling. Um, I decided that that would be where I would start because you didn't have to have, a bunch of money in the bank. And I was like, this is a great way for me to test this concept of real estate without putting myself at total risk. So I got to work. I bought a list of distressed property owners. I started calling the list, didn't have any luck, brought on a partner to help me do like driving for dollars and build a driving for dollars campaign. We built up a pretty massive list of, I think it was like 1,500 properties, which is, I mean, now it's not that crazy now that, we have a full scale business and we have people that drive for us. But when you're starting off and you're working 55 hours a week and you're literally driving for dollars on your way home before you have dinner with your wife and in the morning before you go to work, getting to 1,500 was hard. So after doing that, we ended up getting some good calls off those postcards. My business partner ultimately ended up quitting on me over this 8-month period. And then I brought on another business partner and he ended up quitting. And so I'm like 8 months into this, haven't made a dollar, spent so much money, so much time. I'm like, this doesn't work. And then I had a couple really close calls where I was like, we got this deal and the seller backed out or somebody else snaked it or whatever it was. So it was literally the end of the 8th month. And I said, okay, I'm not doing any more follow-up. I'm gonna stick to the leads that I have like glue, and I'm closing one of them. I don't care what the heck it takes. And sure enough, 15 days later, I closed one. We locked up this lady's house actually in in the neighborhood I lived in for $200,000, and I assigned it to a guy I met at a local meetup for 210. So it's pretty cool. $10,000 check. That was about like 2 months of my salary and one check from my W-2 job. And granted, I was like, yeah, I spent a ton of time figuring this out and doing this, but now I can scale it. Like now I can do it again. So that was my first one. I always say the first one's the hardest. I know other people have had, better luck. They close something in 30 days or whatever, but I think mine being a challenge, taking 8 months, just made every single deal after that much sweeter.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I find stories like this to be so interesting because, the first thing I think of is, what if Noah would have given up, right? Like, I'm curious about that time frame. You're getting grinded down, you're worn down, you're spending a lot of money, you're not seeing the fruits of your labor. You're at the end of month 8. What was it about the end of month 8? You could have quit, but you moved forward. What was it about that time?
I felt like it was I had come so far, and I had thought about just the mental change. I had thought about how also there's this other side to me that's like I just wanted to prove those people that had quit on me wrong. Not in a mean way, because I still love both those guys and they're still both my buddies and we're great friends. But um, in a way to be like, I told you this would work. Now look at the results. So
Uh,
that pushed me, but also just in justification to myself and how much of my free time I had given up. So it's like, I remember Saturdays were like, my wife was in med school at the time too, so I didn't see her very often. So it's like Saturdays, I'd be on seller appointments almost all day, like back to back, just failed appointment after failed appointment after failed appointment. And to not close a deal after giving up that much of my time that I could have spent with my wife felt like such an injustification to myself, to her, to our family. So I was like, I got to close this. So that
yeah,
was kind of that. And also, I think I knew that if I could close a couple deals, it would be the gateway to me going full time into real estate.
yeah, absolutely. No, it's interesting how you have a lot of different external factors kind of motivating you, and it kind of propelled you forward to getting that first deal under your belt.
Yeah. And I appreciate that question too, because that's a that's a deeper level of thinking. And I think that's beneficial to people who are getting started to be like, okay, what was it? Like, how did you push through that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And no, I appreciate it. I mean, it's one of those things where everyone wants to hear that, right? Everyone wants to hear about the one who kind of persisted and got through it, because it's easy to say, hey, I had all this success, but a lot of people don't like to talk about all the muck they went through beforehand.
Mm-hmm. 100%. Yeah. And I think it'd be more helpful if we heard more from people about their struggles,
Mm,
because it's like, you listen to bigger pockets, you listen to these podcasts where people are doing, $100 million syndications, and you're like, holy crap, like they're nothing but success.
right.
But they're not telling you about where they got started, which was most likely in, okay, they raised $5,000 at some point for something, and now they're raising $1 million at some point for a bigger syndication. But there was a lot of time in between. It's just that when you hear it on the podcast, you just are seeing, you're seeing the tip of the iceberg. Like, you ever seen that graphic of success where
Yeah.
it's like, this is success and this is what's peeking out of the water, but they don't see the 300 feet of it. And then they title it like failure, failure, hard work, failure, 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 hard work, failure. And then it's success at the very top.
Yeah,
So
no, absolutely. No, I mean, there's definitely a lot to be said for that. And I'm curious as well, we kind of talked about, the nth of month 8 and you just really going for it, you getting, kind of across that line and getting that first deal. I'm curious as well, a big question other people would have would be transitioning from that W-2 into where you are now. I'm sure there were, a lot of adjustments you had to make, not only in your business, but also psychologically. Could you kind of maybe speak about, maybe a bit of the struggles of, kind of branching out on your own?
yeah, 100%, man. So um, I'm a pretty aggressive risk taker. Um, but there are certain things that I won't take risk on. So in my business financially, I'll take a lot of risks, right? Like, I'll set aside certain money. I'll say this is business money, and I'm always willing to put it all on the line. But then there's my family money, and that I'm not willing to risk. So, my family's security, my family's safety. So when you're starting off, there's not a separation. The money you pull for your business comes out of your family. So it was really hard to get started, right? So one of the things that I had done is I'd said, okay, how do I eliminate all my monthly expenses? How do I have no monthly expenses? Sounds impossible, right? Like, how could you possibly live for free? And most people would be like, you can't do it. Well, so I paid off my car, so I had no car payment, right? My wife's car was paid off, so we had two cars with no car payments. Were they the nicest cars? No, but we owned them free and clear. And then the next thing that we did is we decided to buy a house and house hack it. So we turned part of the house into another. Sorry, we took a split level home, split it, turned the basement into a separate unit. That unit paid for the entire mortgage.
Mm.
So therefore, now we have no mortgage expense. We have no car payment. So our expenses were limited to things like cell phone, food, insurance, health insurance, that type of things. So we're talking like less than $600 a month. So pretty frugal living. But that's what it really allowed me to feel like, okay, I got, and then also having a little bit of savings helped. So I'd saved up like 6 months before I quit. So that made all the difference in the world, because it's not that the stress was completely gone, but it was like, my family's fine. We have food to eat. I could take this risk. I could take this jump, and we'll find a way out. So I just, I would say to anyone else looking to do it, set yourself up for success. Like, I have had some quick or close associates that have just completely made the jump, no thought process at all, and they turned out okay. But that's not how I operate. I needed to do a little bit more planning. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I know different people, different personalities have different, risk tolerance, right? Some people, no problem dropping a nuclear bomb and saying, "Hey, I'm going all in," and other people are like, I need to think about this first, right?
yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah. So yeah, I would just say it's all dependent on that individual person's risk level. Like, are you able? Do you feel confident? Does your spouse also work? Can their income supplement you while you go out and take these risks to start your business? I didn't have that, so it was all on me. So I just was like, I just got to set myself up. I just got to be ready to rock and roll for 6 months in case I don't make a dollar.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. No, well said there, Noah. And I guess from that point, you've learned a lot of lessons. You did your first wholesale deal. After that first 10K wholesale deal, what came next? It sounded like you were trying to scale, or did that come later? Or
Yeah. So I really enjoy working with other people, and I do better on a team. And I just, you have to know your strengths, and you have to know your weaknesses. And I know for me, a weakness is, I don't think it's that fun to grind alone. Like, I like to grind with other people. So after my first deal, um, people started to just know me in that little town in Washington as a wholesaler. So my buyers list started to grow, more opportunities started to come to me. People started to bring me deals and wanted me to help find the end buyer. So we started kind of piecing together these deals, and I kind of became like a matchmaker for buyers and sellers. And it was just kind of this fun time. And then ultimately what ended up happening is there was a guy that was doing wholesales and flips at scale, but in a market about 3.5 hours away from me. So he brought me on. We partnered up together, more as he was my mentor. And, in essence, I really just worked for him. So we did a handful of deals together before I was like, okay, I've learned a lot. I paid my dues. And I feel like that's another important thing for people to consider. You're going to pay your dues no matter what. You're always going to pay to play in this game, right? You're going to pay in mistakes that cost you thousands of dollars. That was the first thing I did, right? Like I spent thousands of dollars on marketing, didn't know what exactly I was marketing for, what exactly a distressed seller was for, what lists were the best lists. So I paid in mistakes. You're going to pay in, either hiring a mentor or something like that. So it's like I paid and I gave up most of my deal. So my split with my mentor was he got 70% and I got 30%. Is that really fair for me putting in all the work and for him to just be available on the phone and pick up calls when I have questions? Maybe, maybe not. I think it was, because at the end of the day, I didn't know how to do stuff and he taught me how to do things that now I know how to do. Or the third way you're going to pay is you're going to buy an educational course, right? There's great programs out there. Talk to People by Brett Daniels, CTP, Wholesaling Inc. There's Fortune Builders, which is like 25 grand to be a part of. And then you're paying for your education. So one of three ways: you pay through failures, you pay through mentorship, or you pay through coaching. So no matter what, though, there's a cost to play. So I think that's just something for people to keep in mind, that either way, there's an expense.
Yeah, no, and that's it's funny you mentioned that, because we were just talking about something similar last week, that there is a cost always to pay, whether it's through the mistakes or through the money.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I found interesting, I was talking to a friend, and he does multifamily as well, and I said, hey, what really got you to take off into multifamily? He said, man, one of the best things I did was buying a course only about underwriting. And he kind of said, hey, if you understand the underwriting process, and I asked him how much money the course was, and he said, he didn't really care, because there was so much value in that course. It propelled him to understand the industry.
100%, man. 100%. Here's another example. We just dropped almost $20,000, which is a lot of money, right? So we just dropped $20,000 on a coaching program for a lady that has a way more in-depth built out CRM than I could ever build, spending 10,000 hours building it. So we are literally copying the system that she uses to do over 100 deals a year. And 100 deals a year is a lot, depending on which type of market you're in. If you're in a low cost per house market, you need to do that volume to have high profit margins, right? Because it's like, if your average flip profit's only 10K a property, well, you need to do a lot to be able to sustain a big business. Versus a market like I'm in, and the average flip profit should be around 55,000. I can do far less and be okay. But either way, we paid to copy her. We paid to have an exact copy of her CRM. So it's Podio is the CRM that we use. And we dropped that money like 45-ish days ago. We just locked up a deal that we have like 3 different exit strategies on. One, we can flip the house, split the lot, and build another house on the back, which will ultimately end up resulting in like 150-ish to $200,000 profit. We can demolish the house and build 9 new homes, which ultimately ends up in a significantly higher profit. I think my partner ran the numbers today. It's like around 1.5 million on that side. Or we can demolish the house, paper the lots, and sell the paper lots. Take no risk on the build, but still make a bunch of money on selling a bunch of paper lots in a market where we have a land shortage available, or a lot shortage available. So like, look at how that works, right? Like we spent 20, which sounds like a lot, but now we have minimum of like $150,000 profit on the line. It pays off pretty quick if you take it seriously and you dive right in,
Yeah, no, I mean, you just said it right there. If you dive right in and take it seriously, and it's interesting as well. Up front, you think you're having this big cost, but there's really, it's not only such a big benefit at the end, but you also have multiple exit strategies, so you have that flexibility too.
Yeah, and I think that was a big shift in my mindset, and I'm sure you've gone through this too, where it's like we go from being consumers to producers, and as a consumer, everything's an expense. As a producer, most things are investments at that point, right? It's like, okay, I spend 20 grand in my business. It's an investment into my business. Versus beforehand, if you go dump 20 grand on a new car in your personal life, it's just an expense. So that's what I think one of the beautiful things about being in business is like, we get to invest back into ourselves and into our companies. And then it just creates this momentum where outside of that, in a job or anything else, we just don't have those opportunities to redeploy capital and put it back to work for ourselves. So business just creates these, I don't know, it's life is wild. I wouldn't have imagined that, I'd be where I am or my business would be where it is like a year ago today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you just mentioned it again there. It's crazy how much can change in your life in just what, 12 months, right?
Hmm. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know you talked a bit about the wholesaling, the flips, the new builds. What, I guess in terms of real estate, what are you looking forward to doing in the future?
Yeah. So our flip business is primarily it's almost fully automated. It runs really without us. My business partner has a lot of his name's Jeff Fossen. He's got a lot of construction experience behind him. He's been flipping homes for like 9 years. So his brother runs all of the day-to-day operations of our flip, and Jeff oversees those operations. So the flips almost are on full autopilot, which is really cool. Where I see our company going, kind of, and what I look forward to doing in the next like 6 to 12 months. So kind of the short-term future, if that's a good way to break that down. I really look forward to kind of just growing our company. So bringing more people on, bringing salespeople on to run the Podio system. Bringing a full time in-person transaction coordinator on. Both my partner and I hate paperwork, so that would be a great thing to outsource and not have to do anymore. And then just building culture around that. Like we just got an office space today. Actually, we signed a lease on it, which is really cool. And it's at this. You guys probably have a ton of these cool commercial developments in Texas, since Texas is a booming market as well. But it's this cool outdoor like mall with a bunch of restaurants and a huge water fountain that puts on a water show every day. And our office is up on the third floor of one of these commercial buildings in this cool little area with coffee shops, and it's going to be fun. But I think that'll help create this culture, and I'm really just looking forward to building other people up and like bringing these people on and changing their lives through like a really cool company that cares about them. I don't think there's enough companies that care about their employees. It's all about money, profitability, the people at the top, and we want to make it about the entire team. So being able to give back to our community in that way, I think is going to be super rewarding. And then outside of that, like more long term, like 5 to 10 years out, I'm really excited about building up our multifamily portfolio. So we just got started in that in January. Um, we own we own 4 doors in Indiana. We have 11 more under contract. We'll see what happens. Getting those 11 is contingent on cash out refining the 4 that we have there. So we're going to pull that cash out and infuse that cash in the other 11 we have under contract. And then we have a 10 unit here in Nampa, Idaho. And then we have a duplex in Boise. So growing that multifamily portfolio is going to be really fun. I'm just excited to see how that unravels.
All right. Now that's, I mean, it sounds like you have a lot of things in the works. So that's pretty exciting, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited. What about you, man? What are you excited for in real estate? How do you want to expand your business in the next, 1 to 3 years and then in the next 10?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, really, so I work for a construction lender here in Austin. So, we'll do deals, not only in the state of Texas, but other states as well. So we'll do Washington State, we'll do Tennessee, North Carolina, we'll do Georgia. So we have a few select states outside of Texas, but really just looking for, just new construction deals and development deals.
Nice. I like it. Yeah. You and I were talking a couple of weeks ago, and I was telling you that was kind of something we might be interested in, is in the next year or so, looking at doing some smaller development projects in Texas.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
I mean, how there's a lot of people moving here, and
Uh-huh.
there's a lot of really nice gems here in Texas. And, we have, comparatively speaking, we don't have the high density that maybe New York City would have, that comparatively there's a lot of land.
Yeah, and what I think would be cool too is that, I don't know if you mind diverting the conversation back to you a little bit, but like, can you speak to Texas a little bit for anybody that's listening that's also been thinking about maybe wanting to go into Texas? I feel like that would be cool too. But also for me, selfishly, like break down the Texas market for me. Tell me why new family or new construction developments are doing well there, and what type of returns these guys are expecting when they go out and build anything from a fourplex to a 100 unit apartment complex.
Yeah. I mean, as mentioned, there's a lot of people moving here. We have really just booming population growth. I could be wrong on this, but I think last I checked, Austin had 127 people moving a day or something like that.
Oh my gosh,
Um,
wow.
so, and it could be increasing. I'm not sure, but Austin's our capital, so it's really in Central Texas. So, you would call maybe Central Texas kind of the hill country. It's a bit hilly, so that would be more between Austin, San Antonio, and then to the north you have Dallas Fort Worth, huge metroplex. Further southeast Texas, you'd have Houston, and then you have other smaller secondary markets in between. But what's unique about Texas is it's so large, it's so wide, and in terms of construction and building, there's a lot of different nuances to the different markets too.
Hmm. That's interesting. So do you feel like in those different markets, builders have to be methodical about what type of product they're building based on which one? I mean, for me, it's like because I'm not from Texas, I only know Austin, Houston, and Dallas, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so speak to those markets. I mean, are you seeing that there's generally a certain class of product that's being built in each of those markets in the multifamily space?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, one example I could use would be San Antonio. So San Antonio, it's a big metro area just south of Austin. So for example, if you compared North San Antonio to South San Antonio, generally South San Antonio is flatter, so you're not having to deal with a lot of the rocks and the hills. Whereas the north side, there's potentially more greenery. Maybe the soil's a bit different. It's rocky, or there's hills or whatever it may be. So builders do, they know they have to take that into account as well. In terms of the class of properties, I mean, there's really all types, right? So there's a big push for affordable housing as well, as well as luxury condos. So anything from luxury to something being more affordable. Just there's a very wide spectrum of people who are looking for housing here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, do you know what the cap rate that people are buying multifamily at in Texas right now?
Yeah, personally, I can't really speak on that too much. I wish I did have a clear answer on that. I do know there are plenty of good multifamily people here in Central Texas to connect with.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because Boise recently made a shift. So I would say like over the last like 5 years, um, in Boise and all these other areas around Boise, if you were going to sell a multifamily property, you would go strictly off the comps, right? So you would look at, okay, I have a duplex. What have these other duplexes sold for recently in my market? And that's how I determine the value of my duplex. But in the last, like, I want to say 12 months, but maybe it's just me. Maybe I've only noticed in the last 12 months. Maybe it's been established a longer time ago than that. But multifamily has switched to selling it strictly at a cap rate, which is very interesting, right? I think it makes it really easy for anyone that's in the flipping space for multifamily, which is a really interesting niche, right? Like finding distressed properties, stabilizing, adding value, and then reselling. But now everything in Idaho sells at a 5 cap. So if you're in the multifamily space, you can price your asset at what doesn't matter what you bought it for. It matters what cap rate you're at. So cap rate, for anyone listening that doesn't know, is just it's the relationship between your total gross rents and the purchase price that you're buying that asset at. So a 5 cap just means that the asset is performing at a 5% return based off of the rents to the purchase price ratio. And that might be a botched explanation, but that's how I understand it. So
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's really just showing you your profitability, right?
yeah, it's a really cool way too to compare different states. Like if you're looking at multiple places. So for example, like all the properties that I own in Indiana, I purchased them all at like almost an 11 cap. So, but it's give and take. My properties in Indiana will never appreciate like my properties in Idaho will. And at the same time, the rents probably won't grow at the same rate either. So like my rents in Idaho, like I have one unit that last year, like actually this house that I'm in now, the unit downstairs rented for $1,000 a month last year. We just placed new tenants at 1,400. It's a
Wow.
big jump.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas in Indiana, maybe over a year, I might jump up $10, $15 a month in rent if I also do some renovations. So it's all based off preference, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you even just explained it there. Kind of comparing Indiana maybe to your own backyard. It's vastly different where the cap rate is a factor, but there's no one size fits all to every market, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. What are some of the reasons you think so many people are moving to Texas?
Yeah, I mean, really, I think the work from home scenario too. So, I mean, kind of how we spoke about, maybe if someone is, used to living in a colder place, maybe they don't like the tax increases, or maybe their standard of living is going down. Whereas in Texas, comparatively, you probably have more bang for your buck. You'd have more space, a lot more sun. It gets pretty hot here as well. Some people don't like it, but it can be a little bit better than 8 months of winter, right? So
Yeah. What was the temperature there today?
today was, let's see, it was a little bit cloudy. I mean, maybe 85, 83.
That's so weird. We had like a heat wave today. Today
Yeah,
was 99 degrees, and it's like that's like the hottest day in summer ever here.
really. No,
Yeah.
I will say, at least in Texas, the past maybe 10 days have been kind of weird. We've had sporadic rain, shine, and then it'll rain for, I don't know.
So I had this private investor. So one of the ways that we're really successful in our flip business is we raise private money. So we buy the flips with our hard money loan, but then we bridge the gap of the money needed down and the rehab money with private money lenders. So these are usually just highly paid people like dentists, doctors, lawyers, anyone that's done really well in life. Sometimes other real estate investors who are no longer interested in managing their own projects. They're like, dude, I'll just give you money. You go do the project and you give me a return for doing nothing.
Yeah.
So, but one of our private money investors, we were talking about starting a fund with him. Um, and then Texas was one of the markets I brought up to him. I said, well, hey, if we start a fund, are you interested in, developing multifamily out in Texas? And he says, this is something I wanted to run past you. He looks at weather patterns a lot, which is very interesting. So he says that one of the correlations he's seen in the reports he reads and the research he's been doing is that in general, if for a certain period of time, and I can't remember if he said it was a year or 2 or 6 months or whatever, but if temperatures have increased, I think he said 15 degrees on average over the last like 2 years or 3 years or whatever his metric was, that it means that that particular coastline is due for a pretty extensive or a pretty intense hurricane season.
Mm.
So that's one of the factors that he kind of shut down, opening up his fund for me to go invest in places like South Carolina, Florida, Texas, because his thought process is he's worried about having an extreme hurricane season come through and wipe out whatever progress we just made.
Right.
But have you experienced any hurricanes that were pretty intense in Texas? And I don't know if you've ever I've personally never paid any attention to weather patterns in any thought process I have, other than the fact that I don't really want to invest in like Kansas and have a bunch of tornadoes come and tear up my properties. But
Yeah, no, understood. So I guess for context, I grew up in Corpus Christi, which is 2 hours south of San Antonio. So it's on the Gulf of Mexico. So, June 1st, that's the first day of hurricane season, right? So we just started. In terms of what I've seen, I mean, I was little. I mean, in the year 2000, we had Hurricane Brett. That was a category 1, I believe. There was some flooding, not too bad. And then we had a few tropical storms over the years. I guess from 2000, I don't remember. Let's see. Fun fact, Hurricane Katrina was actually projected to be a category 5 direct hit on Corpus Christi.
no
So
way. Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
yeah. So when Katrina was in the Gulf, everyone in our hometown was freaking out, and they canceled school for 2 weeks, and the whole, everyone was prepared to evacuate, ended up turning to New Orleans, right? But we were kind of on the red alert for it. We fortunately weren't hit by it. Hurricane Dolly came in. That came more to the Rio Grande Valley to the south. That must have been, I believe, 2009. But it kind of seems like most of the hurricanes in the Gulf kind of go towards the Houston area, kind of Houston, Louisiana, or Texas, Louisiana border.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I thought it was such an interesting thing that he brought up, and um, it's one of those things where I sometimes I think when we overthink things, it just stops us from starting altogether. Right? Like if you sit there and look at, oh my gosh, weather patterns and then traffic patterns and then migration trends and then
Yeah,
cap rate trends, and it's like, man, you can't underwrite everything. You got to pick like what are the most important metrics and how you're going to base it off that. But his thought process of, well, okay, well, according to weather patterns, if Texas was up 15 degrees in temperature over the last 2 years, does that truly mean, in correlation to what's happened in the past, that it is due for a pretty hard hitting hurricane season? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to think about.
Yeah.
It's something that's on my radar now.
Yeah, no, totally understood. And, I mean, that's just kind of, I guess, a little bit of a drawback to living on the Gulf Coast is, you do have to be prepared for when storms come and just get through it, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah.
Well, dude, this was fun to hop on and talk about anything and talk about real estate, talk about investments. I'm
Yes,
hoping that we get linked up back up again and we start doing some deals in Texas.
that's right. Yeah, you have someone to call now, right?
Mm-hmm. I
Yes.
like it, man.
Well, no, is there, I know we've spoken a bit about, your background, you transitioning into the industry, a bit about Idaho, your experience with deals. Is there anything you haven't said that you'd really just like to hit home?
I don't know what your listener base is, if it's mostly like new people getting into real estate or if it's more experienced people. But I feel like the experienced people got it figured out. So I always like to try to help out the people that are getting started. One of the things I would say is a big life-changing thought process for me was, the more people I help get what they want, whatever I want comes in abundance. So, I say it again because I really want that to resonate with people. The more people you help get what they want, whatever it is that you want will come in abundance. And I think that that's transparent, or that extends to any industry or any job title or anything that you're trying to accomplish, right? So for me, my business really blew up when I started thinking about, how can I help all these flippers that don't have inventory? How can I deepen my relationship with them for wholesales? And then for flips, it was like, okay, how do I help these tradespeople have consistent work? So before I even partnered with my partner, my thought process and really what motivated me and pushed me was, I was like, man, he's got a full crew that we have to have enough projects going to keep him busy at all time. Because in our market, it's just so competitive that if you're not dialed in, if you don't have marketing channels, if you're not a systematic investor, you're relying on luck. You're hoping to just snag a deal here or there. But so my thought process was, okay, that's a pain point for him, right? So how do I eliminate that pain point? Well, I find him deals, and I find him consistent deals. And by doing that, we bridged into this partnership, and I went from being able to only do like one flip every 4 or 5 months, because that's how long it took me to manage one at a time, to now we run like 4 or 5 flips at a time. So like, I helped him get what he wanted, and what I wanted came in abundance. But the first thought was, help that other person get what they want. So I see it a lot. There's like a lot of people that will reach out to me. They'll be like, "Hey, can you help me get started in real estate?" I think that's the wrong approach. And I'm sure you get that too. It's like, "Hey, how do I get started in real estate?" I don't know how to tell you how to get started in real estate if you're not already trying to get started. I think a better question, and I actually had one person ask me this, and I hopped on a call with them that day. And I don't normally do that because to me, I don't know if it's going to be a waste of time, or I don't know if it's my advice is going to go in one ear and out the other, right? But this guy reached out, and instead he said, "What bottlenecks do you have in your business?" I said, "What the heck? What bottlenecks do I have in my business?" That's a deep question. And so then I wanted to engage in conversation, and I wanted to be honest about the bottlenecks I had in my business. So after I told him, you know what he asked me? He goes, "Okay, how can I help with that?" He's like, "I don't want anything. I'm just curious, like, genuinely, how can I help with that?" So we started letting him help with that. Now he drives for dollars for us, and he finds us properties. He makes $1,500 every single time we close on a property that he just clicks one button and sends a mailer to. So
Wow.
that would be the one thing I'd leave, is for anyone wanting to get started and you're trying to reach out to people in your market or whoever, and you want to get their attention and you want their time. Their time's valuable, and they've spent considerable hours and money to get where they are. And so you're not likely to grab their attention or get in front of them or get their assistance if you just directly ask for it, but instead ask how you can help them and be thoughtful about it. So, hey, what's your bottleneck? How can I help you? Are you looking for somebody to bird dog for you? What hole in your business can I help fill? And I'm not looking for anything in return. I just want to be around you. I want to be around success, because that's how I become successful.
Yeah, completely. And there's so much value in that, is, really adding that value, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, add value, man. That's the number one way to grow your net worth, in my opinion. So
Yes, sir. Absolutely. No, well, we've, really run the gamut here. We've talked a lot about you, about your background, different deals you do. Maybe someone's in your market in Idaho, maybe they're in multifamily, in construction, how do we get a hold of you? Where can we find you?
Yeah, absolutely, man. We're pretty active on Instagram. So my Instagram is just my personal Instagram. I also run my business through it. So it's Noah Evans _ real estate. We also have a podcast that we'll be dropping here July 1st is the launch date. So I'll probably send you a link, and then that way you can include your link in this podcast as well. Those would probably be the two easiest ways to get a hold of me.
Yes, sir. Sounds good. Well, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show. We've talked about a lot, and it's been a fun time. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, man. It was a cool opportunity, and I'm looking forward to crossing paths again.
Absolutely. Talk later.
Okay, have a good night, brother. See ya.